About 2 years ago, I moved from my college town in Arizona to Woodland Hills, California for a new job. I was 21 and living alone in a studio within 2 blocks of an outdoor mall and gym. The apartments were older, with a fence and cameras around the entire complex and gated entrances. It was a fairly nice area, mostly young professionals and families, and felt pretty safe. After this incident, I refused to be in my apartment complex alone after dark. One night, I decided to take a walk after my workout. It was barely nightfall and still fairly warm. I grabbed my water bottle and started walking past the gym in the opposite direction of my apartment. I walked for a little while, turned around, and started walking home. That's when I noticed a white Escalade with completely blacked out windows that had passed me previously, pass me again. They drove down to the light and made the turn, so I thought nothing of it. Only when I saw the car for the 3rd time did I start to panic. By this point, it was well past dark and most people were headed home from the gym and the outdoor mall. I was still a few blocks from the gym, and the car kept driving past, slowing down and speeding back up if they saw anyone around. I cut through a parking lot to try to get to the nearest open store. Before I knew it, the Escalade was back, and in the parking lot, between me and the store. The car started slowly circling the parking lot, and the windows rolled down partway to reveal 3 men in their 30s or 40s just staring at me. At that point, I was frozen and decided to stand under a light by a closed store while frantically trying to call my friend from the apartment complex to come get me, my mom, and friends from other states, anyone, so I wasn't as alone. The Escalade kept circling, slowing down to barely an idle every time they passed me. I saw the door of the store open and a younger guy come out, clearly done with his shift and headed to his car. I started yelling for him to wait and that I needed help, and took off running towards him. The Escalade sped out of the parking lot, back to the nearest light, and turned again. I apologized to the younger guy for scaring him, and asked if he could please walk me to my gym, thinking the men were probably gone, and I could wait a few minutes there before walking back to my apartment. We got to the gym, and he made sure I felt safe there before going back to his car. I waited for 10 minutes, still trying to reach my friend who lived in my complex so he could come get me. I wasn't able to get a reply from him, so I called one of my friends from back home to talk and started walking the rest of the way home. I got past the main intersection before the car turned down my road and started following me again. My heart sank, and I had a horrible feeling that if I didn't get inside the gate before they got to me, I'd never be seen again. I broke into a sprint and screamed into my phone that I was being followed, and for my friend not to hang up. The gate had just started to close behind another resident's car, and I barreled through it, sprinting the full way back to my apartment and locking the door. About 3 hours later, I went to take my dog out before bed, and out of curiosity, or sheer stupidity, I walked back towards the gate I had come running through, still safe within the fence. I saw the Escalade parked on the other side of the road, waiting just outside the camera's field of view. I calmly turned and walked my dog on the interior of the apartment complex, out of their sight. They came back to the same spot every night for several days, and then I never saw them again. Let me explain myself. I'm 5'7", and I was 16 at the time of the encounter. I'm a multi-sport athlete, and I have insomnia. This all happened around 2 a.m. on August 10th, 2019. I had been over to my best friend's place because she had just returned home from a vacation, and she had birthday presents for me. Hoodies and gummies, if you're curious. I had spent almost an hour there already, and wanted to head back home soon, because honestly, my town is scary at night. So I waved goodbye to my best friend and started walking down her street. I guess a party had just let out because behind me at the end of the road, about 20 or 30 yards from where I was standing, there were a couple of men walking across the crosswalk. They were both pretty tall. The two seemed harmless at first, when I looked in their direction, but soon they came to a stop. They were both looking at me. At this point, I felt uncomfortable, so I just kept walking. That's when I overheard what one of them said. "Hey, that's a girl." At this, I whipped my head around. They were starting to walk in my direction now, and one of the two men had moved over towards the sidewalk, where there was no light. I knew at this point that something wasn't right, and I began to pick up my pace. They were still getting closer. I didn't know where the second guy was, but when I looked back, the first guy was still following me down the middle of the road. I think that they were planning to cut me off and try to trap me between the two of them. The minute I was about 13 yards from the T intersection, I started to run, and that's when the yelling started. Oh great, now she's running. I hooked a sharp right, and then a left. I could still hear them behind me, and at this point, all I knew was that I couldn't stop moving. I had to lose them somehow. I was coming up to an apartment building with a small parking lot behind it. There were no lights. I made the split-second decision to veer off into the parking lot, and I squeezed myself under one of the cars. I don't know how long I waited there. It could have been a minute, but it felt like a lifetime. I watched the two men run past. They didn't bother to check under the cars, which was definitely in my favor. The minute I felt that I was safe, I backtracked and took a different route back to my home. I was too scared to take the main route, in fear I would have bumped into them. I know what I'm about to say is foolish, but I didn't go to the police. I wouldn't have been able to give a proper description of the men because I hadn't seen their faces. This happened a year ago. I'm a 25-year-old female who has been living in Tokyo for 7 years. One night I went to see an orchestra with my friend, which finished around 10:30 p.m. She goes home, and it was a beautiful night, so I decided to walk around this area of the city which I rarely go to. On a semi-empty street, this 40-ish-year-old Japanese guy dressed like every other salaryman here stops me to ask how to get to this subway line called Hibiya Line. A bit odd, but whatever. I pull out Google Maps and give him directions. When I look up, I realize he wasn't listening and looked at me with these creepy eyes and creepy smile. He then said, "Where are you going?" I tell him I'm meeting my boyfriend close by. I was lying. He asks if he can walk with me. I firmly say no. My boyfriend was waiting for me. I turn around and walk away. Suddenly I hear him cry behind me, "Please, please, I beg you, please," in English, and literally was on his knees. I freak out and fast walk away. When I look back, he got back on his feet and was walking in the same direction as me. Now I know I should have been more freaked out, but it does happen that random Japanese guys ask to walk with me and talk. I am mixed Asian, but look more foreign. They give up quickly after I firmly show it won't happen. It's usually harmless. I get to the busy train station, which is basically thousands of people, like fish schooling. I move in random directions for 20 minutes to lose him. By that time, I'm pretty certain he couldn't have followed me in this crowd. I relax and stupidly go back to my plan of taking a walk by myself at midnight. I know. I walk through the gardens of the Imperial Palace, which is a huge park with no lights and no one to be seen at this time of the day. I take dark, empty streets. I had forgotten about the creepy guy and just admired my surroundings and enjoyed the quietness. I walk for almost an hour. I am 4 stations away from where I met the creepy guy. It's past midnight, so time to catch the last train home. I go down the stairs to the closest station. I decide to stop and look down on my phone to check how to get home from there. Then I felt taps on my shoulder. It was the creepy guy, with even more insane eyes and smile. That's when dumb me fully realized that Psycho followed me through a crowd of thousands of people, a dark park, and small empty streets for over an hour. And guess what? The Hibiya line didn't pass by this station. I start yelling my lungs out and make threatening gestures to back off and get away from me, and I run to the gates where there are more people. He full-on runs to catch me. I pretend to go down the stairs to a platform and then quickly hide behind a column. I see him run past me frenetically, searching for me with his crazy eyes, but he doesn't look back. He doesn't see me. I run back up the stairs and get on a different train. I call my boyfriend who met me halfway home. I uncontrollably shivered all the way home, petrified.